party tonight! What? TV party tonight!
Oh, we got nothing better to do than watch TV and have a couple of brews.
Don't want to talk about anything else!
We don't want to know.
We're dedicated, yes!
To our favorite shows!
Oh, my circuits!
Everybody loves Houseboat!
Scary dog!
Pearson and Blurnsville!
Futurama!
Good evening. You are listening to a Radulich and Broadcasting premiere podcast TV party tonight. I'm stressed out. Your host, the mandated reporter, and frankly, I'm mortified, Mr. Mark Radulich. Gotta clear my throat. Let me clear my throat. Na 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 na. And our favorite show tonight is Homicide Life on the Street Season 5. Brought to you by the good people at Baltimore Pictures, Reeves Entertainment, MCEG Sterling Incorporated, Fatima Productions, NBC Productions, NBC Studios, and NBC Universal Television Distribution. We're doing something a little bit different with this TV party tonight. First of all, let me bring my co-host here, my best buddy, my primary partner, Mr. Jesse Starcher. How do you do, sir?
Oh my goodness, Mark Radulich. Boy, oh boy, this is going to be a fun project. I am excited, especially where we're starting out. This is kind of a nostalgia trip for me, where we're starting out here. So,
All right.
Yeah, man, this is going to be a good time.
Let me quick explain what the deal here is. All right.
Good dealio.
So I came to you a couple months back. I said, hey, I'm going to be wrapping up the Mania of WrestleMania, and I like doing these series. And a lot of people have asked me in the past, like, you talk so much about The Wire. How come you've never done a TV party on it? How come you've never done a TV party on this? How come you've never done a TV party on that? Really, really quickly, we started doing TV parties because of the Marvel Netflix shows.
Yeah.
Because they were, ancillary to the Marvel movies, the MCU movies. So it was like, okay, well, in addition to all of these MCU movies, Iron Man, Captain America, Thor, now we're doing Daredevil, Power Man, Iron Fist, and Jessica Jones. We should talk, and then eventually Punisher. We should talk about those too. And then occasionally, like somebody like Jesse or somebody else would be like, I like this show. We should talk about it. Let's talk about Black Mirror. Let's talk about the Orville. Let's talk about this. Let's talk about that. Sean and I had done a couple of seasons of Orange is the New Black.
Right.
And so it just, the more and more we started doing things, the more TV shows we would add to this. But we were starting to do things that were contemporary. Like occasionally we would look back and do something like Community, or we would look at the last season of Game of Thrones because we hadn't reviewed it before, but we would go back and kind of talk about the whole thing leading up to the final season, stuff like that. But I thinking about it, I was like, I really do. I'd like to spend an hour talking about these different David Simon shows. And then a thought occurred to me, why don't we do an extended series looking at one season each of everything David Simon is credited with producing, or being a story editor on something that really has his name on it.
Right.
And as it turns out, if you look at David Simon's Wikipedia page, there's a whole list of everything that's credited to him, including the major things like The Wire, The Deuce, Treme, and so on. So I says to Jesse, hey, Jesse, what if we spend one Wednesday a month looking at every season on this list that's on David Simon's Wikipedia page? And he was like, yeah, that sounds great. Because I think like you're in like the middle of The Wire watch, right?
Yeah. We stopped at season 4, I think. So there's 5 seasons of that, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I think we're in the middle of season 4, and it's been forever since we picked that back up.
Right.
So now I get to I'm going to re-experience it with this.
And I don't think you'd watch the other ones. Like I don't think you'd watch The Corner. I know you never watched Show Me a Hero, or Generation Kill or anything like that. I haven't even seen Generation Kill.
No.
I've seen The Corner. I've seen The Wire. I've seen Treme, and I've seen Show Me a Hero. And then they have this new one that's coming up, starring John Bernthal, which we're gonna we own this city. Is the name of it.
Yeah.
So, point being, we're starting a series, and I'm simply calling it From the Corner to the Deuce, the great works of David Simon. And I keep mentioning his name. Who is David Simon? For those of you who don't know, David Simon worked for the Baltimore Sun City Desk for 12 years, between 82 and 95. He wrote the book Homicide, A Year on the Killing Streets in 1991, and he co-wrote The Corner, A Year in the Life of an Inner City Neighborhood in 1997 with Ed Burns. The former book was the basis for the NBC series Homicide Life on the Street from 93 to 99, on which Simon served as a writer and producer. Simon adapted the latter book into the HBO miniseries The Corner. So David Simon was a journalist. He wrote those two books, as we mentioned. And Ed Burns, I believe, was a police officer whom he teamed with, and they were responsible for The Wire, and the way that The Wire works specifically is you had this journalist and this ex-journalist and this ex-cop sort of collaborating on what does a real detective unit look like. Mm-hmm. And so I wanted to really examine this guy's body of work, because he's not just a television producer. He's not just a writer or an ex-journalist. David Simon really is one of like the great cultural editorialists of our time. Mm-hmm. Like, he has really got a keen eye for what is going on in the world, and like procedurally, culturally, aesthetically, I think David Simon speaks a lot of truth. I like a lot of what he has to say. I don't always necessarily agree with his take, but I like what he's saying and the way he's saying it. Mm-hmm. So how much of David Simon were you even aware of?
Well, this is it right here. Homicide Life on the Street, apparently, but I didn't even know he was tied to it in any way. I didn't associate his name with it in any way. And I will say that this is the first police drama that I remember actually watching and enjoying as a young adult. You know, as a kid, you were probably exposed to Hill Street Blues or, Law and Order maybe. But Homicide was one of the first shows that me and the wife were like, okay, let's sit down and let's watch Homicide together. What's going to happen next on the next episode? It was like our first ever real police drama that we enjoyed. So yeah, didn't know much about David Simon there. You started talking about The Wire, and I was finally like, okay, I'm going to give this a shot and check that out. And I've really enjoyed what I had seen so far of that as well. The rest of those other shows, just like you said, I never had a chance to either watch them or even knew they existed. Some of those I was like, I had no clue. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of where I was at. I followed Homicide all the way from season 1 all the way up to the end. Then he came on here, obviously.
That's what I was going to ask you.
5.
So did you watch Homicide when it was contemporaneous, or did you find it later on? And if so,
later on.
So what brought you to Homicide? Because I think just because I've read a lot about David Simon, I knew it was there, but I've never watched a single season of Homicide Life on the Street until we decided to do this series.
Really? Okay. So the only thing I can really remember is right after me and Mindy got married, we had this, no kids, no nothing. We were just in this small apartment, and it was time for bed. We'd go to bed. We had a TV in our bedroom. We'd turn on A&E. I think A&E ran reruns of this. And so we started watching it pretty faithfully. This was 98. So we came in at the very tail end of the series, but was watching the reruns. So catching up on what was going on in the reruns that they were showing. So that was 98, 99, maybe even 2000. But anyway, because we got that apartment in, I want to say it was 99, 2000. So that was right at the end of Homicide. But anyway, so yeah, we're watching that. And then we just kind of gravitated towards it. That's kind of what brought us there, brought us to the Homicide dance, I guess you'd say. Reruns.
All right. So let's talk about what Homicide is. Homicide Life on the Street is an American police drama television series chronicling the work of a fictional version of the Baltimore Police Department's homicide unit. It ran for 7 seasons, 122 episodes on NBC from January 31st, 1993 to May 21st, 1999, and was succeeded by Homicide the Movie in 2000, which served as the series finale. This series was created by Paul Attanasio and based on David Simon's book, as we mentioned before. Many of the characters and stories used throughout the show were based on events depicted in the book. So we are going to start with season 5. Now, the reason why is, again, as I look at the Wikipedia page, under the filmography, under producer, it says television shows for which David Simon has a producing credit. So he is named as the story editor for season 5, and then he's a producer for season 6 and season 7 before he moves on to doing The Corner and then The Wire, et cetera, et cetera. So that is where we start tonight. Homicide Life on the Street, season 5. And this, I'm going to pitch it to you in just a sec, Jesse, but I think there's a significant change in the cast from seasons 1 through 4 to season 5. This particular season aired from September 20th, 1996 to May 16th, 1997, and contained 22 episodes. A new opening sequence debuted at the start of the season, including elements of a police investigation and growing chatter of radio transmissions behind the music theme. In addition, pictures of the actors were displayed alongside their names for the first time. The sequence ends with the ringing of the squad room phone and a voice answering, Homicide. Homicide. 2 new characters appeared during the season: Chief Medical Examiner Julianna Cox, and Detective Terry Stivers, a recurring character portrayed by guest star Tony Lewis, and a narcotics officer who works with Homicide to bring down the local drug kingpin, Luther Mahoney. All right, so I know you wanted to kick off the discussion with the end of season 4, so let's get into it.
Yeah, really, real quick. I mean, you covered a good bit of it here. There's a few things that you got to know about season 4 because we're jumping right into season 5. Who starts at season 5 for crying out loud? Well, folks, that's us. We're going to do that, but I want to kind of give you up to speed on what happened at the end of season 4. So in season 4. You talked about some of the people that showed up in season 5. In season 4, that was Mike Kellerman first showed up there. J.H. Brody, which is the documentary filmmaker, Brody shows up in that season. Sergeant K. Howard shows up in season 4. Luther Mahoney's first appearance is in season 4. Stu Garrity, which that name, put a pin in that because that's going to show up at the end of this season. He was apparently a beat cop, I believe, and then he's become a detective, which shows up at the end of season 5. We do have some final appearances, but they do reoccur in this season. There is Detective Megan Russert. Okay. Mm-hmm. We see her at the end of this season, but she was a mainstay throughout season 4. And here's the thing. She was played by, oh my goodness, I had her name here. I want to say it was, let me see. Let me go back to that Wikipedia real quick. I want to say it starts with an I. I swear it starts with an I. Isabella Hoffman. So Isabella Hoffman, Megan Russert, in season 4, she is actually married, I shouldn't say married. She's partnered with Daniel Baldwin as not the character. That is her partner, and she becomes pregnant with Daniel Baldwin's baby. So if you remember at the end of this season, we talk a little bit about Daniel's character. While she is off of the show because she becomes pregnant with Daniel's baby, which I think, if I remember reading correctly, there was a love affair between their two characters too. So it's interesting to think about that. But yeah, Megan Russert was in most of season 4. She leaves. Now let's talk about how we're getting into season 5 post Pembleton stroke. Okay. Did you have a chance to watch that? I know I sent it to you, but anybody can go out there, find the YouTube clip of Frank Pembleton having a stroke in the box.
Let's say that I did, but why don't you describe it for everyone?
Okay. Well, it was some of the most, I've never seen anybody have a stroke, so I don't know.
So hang on. Let's talk about who Pembleton is.
Okay. Yeah. Frank Pembleton, portrayed by Andre Braugher. He is one of the main characters since season 1. Mm-hmm. It's usually
most recently and most famously the captain in Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
Captain Holt. That's right. Yeah. Brooklyn Nine-Nine. So it's usually him and Tim Bayliss that the show usually focuses around. They were the main stars there at the beginning. So at the end of season 4, the final episode, Frank is in the box and he's interrogating somebody. So, when we're talking about this police procedural, it's a homicide unit. They're going out, they're finding perpetrators who have committed homicide, and they're bringing them in, trying to get a confession. So the way that they do that is they put them in the box, what they call the box, which is this, this brick-laid room. You got the light. It's almost just like you think it is, an interrogation room where they are drilling you to try to find out and try and get you to confess to something that you did. So if anything can be said about Frank Pembleton, if Frank Pembleton gets somebody in the box, he is going to do whatever he can to try and get that confession out of somebody within the bounds of the law. he is intense. His character is intense. And what we see at the end of that final episode is he suffers a stroke in the middle of a interrogation. And it is, I don't know. I've never seen anybody have a stroke before, but I'm certain that it's not pretty. And the way Andre Braugher portrays the stroke happening, I mean, he grabs his head, he's screaming, he starts seizing, he falls in the middle of things. I mean, you almost could say, well, boy, that's overacted, but you don't. I mean, it's probably he's probably done his research. Trust me, he's a good actor. But one of the things I wanted to say was this. He was about done at the end of season 4. Like, he felt like the Pembleton character had run its course and he's done. He wants to leave the show. And then they were like, how about we give Frank a stroke? And he was like, I'm in. So he sticks around for season 5. So that's where we start season 5. It's Pembleton coming back to the squad after he had suffered his stroke. And him trying to acclimate himself back into his duties if he can get back on the street, because that's where he feels most at home. But the rest of the squad, no, G is like, nah, not happening. But anyway, I'll stop there. I want to actually turn it over to you here for our first part of season 5. I know you had some things you wanted to talk about. I think the stroke would probably be best to start off here with.
Let's just start off with that first episode. We're not going to go episode by episode through all of these, because I think there are at least 2 major plot lines that the most of the season deals with, and one is Pembleton's recovery from the stroke and how it affects him in the squad room, how it affects him in his marriage, which I definitely need to talk about. But the other one is, I can't remember the character's name offhand. Kellerman. He is under investigation for bribery in the arson unit. And there's a large portion of season 5 that deals with that. And while at the end, spoilers, he is absolved of any guilt, it weighs heavy on him. I didn't get a chance to finish the entire season. Does he leave at the end of season 5? Because I think at some point he becomes a private detective.
Right. Yeah. And it's not the end of season 5. He's still there season 6. So you get to enjoy more Kellerman season 6.
Okay. But he definitely thinks about quitting. Like, he threatens to at least once or twice. There's an episode with him and his brothers where they are trying to get him to go to Miami, which is wildly amusing.
Right.
We have to talk about him on the Houseboat, where basically it's almost like a 2-actor, 1-act play that deals with him contemplating suicide. So
yeah, dude. Right.
So let's dial it back. Let's talk about Pembleton's return. When we first, over the course of season 5, Pembleton does get better, but when we first see him, and he's just coming back from the stroke,
right?
He's still having difficulty finding words. Like, he sounds like me when I'm really tired.
I mean, what does he call it? I can't remember. He calls something completely wrong by the wrong name. Like, I think it's a coffee pot or something, and he calls it something by something totally different. He's like,
he
doesn't understand what the problem
football, is. He's like pointing at the coffee pot, yelling football like everybody else is an idiot.
Right.
I don't think that was it, but it was something along those lines.
Yeah. It's a real. I mean, I understand why Andre Braugher was like, okay, yeah, this is a challenge.
Yeah.
Because he definitely puts in the acting for somebody trying to get back to normal after suffering a stroke, where they the stuttering, he is.
How brilliant is Andre Braugher?
Right, dude. You cannot deny his acting ability when you're seeing this.
So good. Because you're right. Like, sorry, I have to keep clearing my throat.
You're right.
He so much of what he's doing, he obviously doesn't have a stutter. He doesn't have a stroke. Like, if you've ever seen Brooklyn Nine-Nine, you know he's an extremely well-spoken, composed individual. That's how he pulls off that character and why it's so funny, especially opposite to the goofballs on Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
Right.
And so here he's like, like he's stuttering, like you said. And I reflected on this as I watched the season. Like, I think I'm up to episode 16 or 17. and he's largely recovered, and he has this, like, especially his relationship with Bayless. Like, coming into it cold, I didn't know any of that, but you see him and Bayless over time, and when Bayless has finally had enough of him, it's because Andre Braugher's character Pembleton is really condescending. You know, he's so smart, but he's that smart, you know, like, he knows he's smart, and he thinks he's like the smartest guy in the room, to the point where, like, everybody feels devalued by him.
Right. But here's the thing. You can't deny that he is the smartest guy in the room. And I think that's what drives people nuts. It's like
he's largely right about his hunches.
Yes. Yeah. He is something that he has one purpose, and he does that purpose well. And he knows it. He knows he's a good detective. He knows he's somebody who can get a good confession out of. And I think that's what I like about this season is the fact that he is struggling with knowing that he cannot do his job. Number one, they won't let him do what he was doing because of, you could die, sir. And, you know, we don't want your death on the squad's hands here because we just turned you loose back into doing what you were doing, your high pressure job. And that's just like you said, the arc that we get with him is him struggling, number one, to get back to what he was doing before, but also the fact that he has to baby step his way there. You know, they have that one episode where he's doing the test. He's doing the shooting test with his gun. With his gun. Yeah. As if you couldn't tell what he was shooting with. But he's doing that. He's doing that range test.
Keep going for 1 second. I'll be right back.
All right, dude. So he's doing the range test. And at that point there, he's showing that he's struggling. He cannot hit the target, but it eats him alive that he is not able to do it. He's faced with the facts. He can see it, that he is not able to do what he was able to do so perfectly before. So watching him struggle and go through these tough times, it really makes the Pembleton arc throughout this season to see him go from just coming back onto the squad and making his way back to getting onto the streets. And that takes some time. And if you were watching seasons 1 through 4, you knew how well you wanted to, you knew that you wanted to see Pembleton out there and mixing it up with some perps. You wanted to see him doing that, and you didn't get that. This was like, you know, they sit down, take a seat, take some phone calls, actually make some phone calls for us, go get lunch. And you're like, oh my gosh, Pembleton. Well, that's just one of the aggravations of you know, Pembleton, and it passed on to the viewer. So there's that. You also get to see him struggling in his home life, you know, going back and watching him have those fits of rage with his wife and his newborn baby. And you're kind of like, I was really legitimately concerned about the baby there at one point because of how, you know, he was holding the baby, and you're just like, oh man, Pembleton's going to do something because he's messed up in his brain. Something's going to happen. It's not going to be good.
That's the therapy session that he has. Let's just keep talking about this now. The therapy session that he has with the wife, the couples counseling,
right?
He talks about feeling helpless, that the stroke affected him. So because you know what happens with the stroke, you lose feeling on the side of your body, and you know it eventually will come back with enough rehabilitation and time, as it does with him. But you know, in the beginning, you need a lot of assistance. You're dependent on people around you. And
right. You know, he mentions, like, I had to have people wipe my ass. You know, imagine all that control that Frank had, and now it's gone.
Right.
And that's what he had to deal with.
That's what you took the words right out of my mouth. Like he, you know, here he is, this big, strong, tough cop, you know, who's so smart, and he's reduced to basically like an infant.
Right.
But he's an infant in an adult body with an adult brain, with an adult's lifetime worth of experiences.
Horrible.
And I was thinking, not to bring this down or derail the whole podcast about personal stuff, but you know, as people who have been long time listeners to the show have heard me talk about struggling with cancer for a couple of years, and sorry. So I struggled. I got cancer in 2017, which means I was probably sick in 2016, but I I got diagnosed in the beginning of 2017, and I didn't get better until probably the summer. But then in the summer, recovering from the chemotherapy, I was really sick for a while. And 2018, I was okay. I was just doing a lot of tests, and it was always like, it could be this, could be that. But for the most part, I got through 2018 relatively unscathed. 2019, I had a reoccurrence of cancer. And then they did an experimental therapy with me, and I had to stay home for 3 months. I couldn't leave the house. I couldn't do anything. And then, oh, by the way, that didn't work. And I was sick all through 2019 into 2020, where I almost died because the cancer had gotten so big. I couldn't breathe. I would take 2-3 steps and I would be completely out of breath, like I had run a marathon. Had it gotten any bigger, I probably would be dead by now. And as Jesse and Chris Armstrong know, there was a time where I was vomiting violently because of the tumors in my lungs.
The man still made the podcast.
I was pissed they hung up on me.
He was.
I said, if you hang up on me in a dream, you better wake up and apologize.
Oh, shit.
So I did a different kind of chemo this time around, a much harsher form of chemo. And I had no immune system going into late summer, early fall, which then caused my gums to become infected, resulting in teeth being pulled, which resulted in my jaw breaking. And because I had no immune system, my jaw was broken for a good 6 to 7 months. Okay. Which took me into 2020, the summer of 2021, where I was finally given an immunotherapy treatment that I had to self-inject. So like a heroin addict, I had to stick myself with a needle 2-3 times a week in order to get my immune system to bounce back. So
talking about taking things out of your control,
the
man with the schedule.
So all of that I identified with what's going on with Pembleton, because he's sitting there like, I was reduced to like an infantile state, and I don't, more of what I'm getting at. The wife said something to him, and it was very similar to something that Melissa had said to me, which was something along the lines of, sometimes it felt like it would be easier if you had died, because it was hard to live with you like that. And how that made me feel and everybody else feel around you. No one could help you. You didn't want any help. You couldn't do anything for yourself. It was just, meanwhile I'm fucking dying through all of that and don't have a lot of control over anything. And I don't know if you know this or not, but when you're that sick, it messes with your head. Oh, yeah. So maybe you're not always in the right state of mind.
Oh, yeah.
But hearing the wife of Pembleton say something familiar, like it had almost been better if you had died, because at least then there would be some finality to it, as opposed to having to struggle with you in this. And then you're so angry about it, which I related to, because I was angry about it for a really long time.
Yeah.
And then you try to get back to normal, like he wants to come back. Like we talked about at the beginning of the season, where he comes back to work and he wants to be a cop again. And everyone's like, no. And I think it's even the captain who's like sticking his neck out for him, because he's like, you're not really in the best shape to be doing this, but I'm trying to do you a favor. And it's bad all around. And like I said, I remember going back to work and like, especially in the middle of chemo, like, like having to run back and forth to the bathroom and trying to not shit all over myself. I remember one morning I was working in booking, and I like sneezed, vomited, and shit my pants all at the same time in booking. So it was hard to watch that. And then while I'm still with my wife and family, she leaves. And that was a gut punch. That was just absolutely heart-wrenching.
Right, dude. Right.
Because I was never necessarily as vehemently vocal as he is in that scene. Mm-hmm. There's a level of like almost detest for her. Like And I kind of get it, because sometimes when you're really, really smart and you're surrounded by people not so smart, you're like, can you please like get to my level? And you're just mad at them because they won't.
Frank's ego. He definitely has an ego. That's for sure.
Yeah.
And it, you know, some of it's justifiable. You know, that's powerful writing.
Yeah.
It really, really is. When you're thinking that this
it
is
totally hits me where I lives.
Right, dude. 96, 97, I think is when this was. So this was 96, I think, in these earlier episodes when they aired. But yeah, that's very, very powerful, very real. So it, you know, I think that's why this series is as lauded as it is, in my opinion.
Right.
Because when you see the Frank character and everything that he's going through, especially in this season, yeah, it's great to see. It's great to see that powerful writing on display here.
And that's, you know, taking it back to where we started with this, and then we'll move on to something else. That's David Simon, though.
Right.
You know, I think he didn't write all of these episodes, obviously. A lot of them are written by Tom Fontana, who also worked on The Wire. Yeah, there's Tom Fontana and Julie Martin, Henry Bromell, James Yoshimura.
An episode by, I think we get an episode by Yaphet Kodo in here too. It's like, I think he writes one of the later ones. I don't know if you got to it yet.
Eric Overmeyer, he's in there. So like, I'm just looking at the stories by, not even like the teleplay part. One sec, what's up?
Nothing, I just stepped back.
Okay, I didn't know if there was something you wanted to tell me.
Nope.
Yeah, Yaphet Kodo, episode 20.
Yeah, so you'll get to that one. Yeah, there's a lot of good stuff happens in this, but definitely the Frank Pembleton character and everything that happens around him, that is some of the finer parts of what happens in season 5. I will tell you, when we start talking about Kellerman and his arc, there's some powerful stuff that's happening there too.
Yeah.
But I've never been annoyed by more of by a character more than Frank Kellerman.
All right, so let's talk about that next. But before we do, you know, you talked about the writing and how great it is. Would have given it slightly more of an edge if they had used Grammarly.
Maybe.
Grammarly's AI-powered products help people communicate more effectively. Grammarly helps you write mistake-free on Gmail, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and nearly anywhere else you write on the web. Grammarly corrects hundreds of grammar, punctuation, and spelling mistakes while also catching contextual errors, improving your vocabulary, and suggesting style improvements. To download Grammarly today, go to getgrammarly.com/W2M Network. Again, it's getgrammarly.com/W2M Network to download Grammarly for free. All right, Jesse, explain in 50 words or more exactly what happened with Kellerman when we find him this season, and then we'll get into talking about it in Night Will Be Here, right?
Yeah, so Kellerman at this point, he becomes, like Mark said earlier, he becomes under investigation for taking bribes while he was in arson. So there is a rather poignant point that Kellerman is trying to make, that he's good police. He's good police, and he would never take bribes, and he never did. And that's something that he can't believe other people would think he would do. That's where a lot of the aggravation for Kellerman comes from. Number one, and he's also kind of a flirtatious jerk a lot of the times too. He annoys me.
Like, he seemed like he got taken down a peg by the whole thing. Like he was sort of like a hotshot young, you know, pith and vinegar detective, and then this happens, and he is just whatever house of cards that ego was built on was completely shattered.
A lot of pride Kellerman has in doing the job the way he believes it should be done. And when as he's going through this, I mean, it does start messing with his head. He starts realizing that the people that he's surrounded with may not believe he is as good a person as he knows he is.
That is a big part of this. Like, and again, I identified with him too, because, you know, he's sitting there like, when he is absolved of guilt, and then he confronts, I think it's the reporter or somebody, and they're like, maybe it might have been the attorney, I don't remember which one, but he confronts somebody that had been in the episode, and he's like, why is it when I was a dirty cop with no evidence, I was front page news, but I'm absolved of guilt and I'm buried, like I'm buried some, in the middle of the newspaper that nobody's going to read.
Right. Yeah. It's like, why am I not? Now everybody's still going to believe that. And that's so true. It's like, they're not going to report the good news.
Right.
They're just going to report the bad news.
And so, he's sitting there, and like the whole time what's fascinating about his story is that he knows his unit's dirty, but this is the mid 90s, right? And it's not, with some, think about like Black Lives Matter and, and the whole like confrontational rapport between the Black community and police. And they talk about the blue wall of silence and all of that. And these are things we're dealing with right now. And there's movements to try to change these things because of perceived or actual corruption and racial tension, generational prejudices, that sort of thing, institutional prejudices, institutional racism within vast police correctional networks across the United States, right?
Right.
In the 90s, they were talking about this, and it wasn't. And it wasn't new, or like it was just kind of there. But like, think about what he's talking about. You're right back here. Pick up where I'm talking about, like the whole idea of that he is struggling with this idea of like, I gotta be loyal to the police, my brothers. We are a unit. We are a fraternity. On the other hand, I didn't do anything, and I shouldn't be persecuted.
Yeah.
Right back.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Kellerman has, like I said, a sense of pride. He wants others to believe he's a good police, and he also wants the people that he's surrounded with, but he's also not going to snitch. That's one thing that he's not going to do. These people were taking bribes around him, and he wasn't exposing them to it. They just offered him, hey, you want to be on the take? And he was like, no, I'm not. I'm not going to do that. He has higher values. But then when he starts getting lumped in with those people, it starts messing with his head. He can't, number one, he's drinking a lot. So Kellerman's a bit of an alcoholic. He gets into a relationship with the medical examiner. It's not really the best relationship. They found each other, I guess you would say. It's probably the best way to put it. So as much comfort as they can find within each other, it's still not making him right. And he doesn't handle that relationship very well because of the stress that he's under in regards to this investigation. And we can talk about Lieutenant Giardello here, the guy that heads the homicide squad. He puts Kellerman on suspension. And again, that's another thing where Kellerman's like, look, I'm good. What else do I need to do other than to tell you that I'm good? I'm a good police. Keep me out there. Why are you suspending me for something I didn't even do? And it's for a completely different department.
Yeah.
So, that begins, it all starts to snowball. It just begins to snowball in his head.
Well, he thinks he's going to get drummed out of the service anyway. Right. Because you cannot be a party to corruption and say nothing. That in and of itself is a crime.
Right.
And that is one of the things about this show in general is just how layered the text is.
Yeah.
So people watch Law and Order. I would say like Homicide and Law and Order are very similar shows. You have a
crossover.
There was. There was it's a procedural show. These are how homicide investigations are handled, but you also have a cast of characters who are going through like personal dramas.
Yeah, this is very much, I paid a lot more attention to the personal issues that were going on with the police.
Yeah, I think the homicide things are interesting, but it's kind of the monster of the week kind of deal.
Right.
More of the through threads of like Kellerman and Pembleton, and to a lesser extent the guy that does the crime scene photos, who's homeless. They're like most of the season.
He's not homeless. I don't think he's homeless. I think that man had a agenda, but I'll explain that here in a few. But go ahead.
Okay. The other characters really don't have much of a story. Like Yaphet Kotto, who plays the captain. Melissa Leo, the sergeant, and then the other black detective who the lighter skinned one, who's the
Meldrick Lewis, Kellerman's partner.
Yeah, he if I remember correctly, he's an editor in season 5 of The Wire. I love the way his line deliveries are some of the best. Because I remember in season 5 of The Wire, he's just like he says a word, and I can't remember what the word is now. He was just like he acts like he's a dumbass. He was like, I went to Baltimore public school. I don't know what that word means.
Man, I can't wait. I didn't know. So season 5 of The Wire, that's where he showed. Like, he's one of my favorite actors on the show. I like that. I like Lewis. I think
he has a smooth kind of jazzy delivery, doesn't he?
Yes, he does. He is he is like one of the coolest cops on this show. I think he's been on it. I'm pretty sure he has at least been on it since the first season. I'd have to double check that and make sure. But Lewis is definitely my favorite cop off of here.
Yeah.
I like Pembleton's intensity, but Lewis is like the coolest cat in the room.
He really is. He's the jazz detective. Anyway, back to Kellerman. So the Kellerman is really he just wants to be a cop, and he did the right thing by not taking the bribes, but he didn't do the right thing in reporting, but he did do the right thing in the culture of that environment. You don't tell on your brothers. And it's just it's a giant source of frustration for him. And then he's found not guilty. He testifies.
Oh man, he was about ready to lay it out there too. He was like, "All right, you guys want it? Let's go."
Yeah, I'll poison the whole well. And it's so funny because because the attorney doesn't go after it, and she even says that she's just like, there was no need to burn the whole unit. We got right. An innocent man did not get wrongly convicted. Justice is served well enough. And he's almost like, after you tortured me for this long, after I agonize.
He agonized. He really did all this to himself, to be honest. He was really agonizing over something that, he just kept reading into things and just kept, like I said, it kept snowballing in his head, and it kept getting worse and worse and worse and worse.
Mm-hmm.
So
let's talk about the Houseboat episode.
Yeah. And here's the thing. You said you got up to see episode 17, right?
Yeah.
Okay. When we're done talking about the Houseboat episode, I'm going to have to tell you what happens with Kellerman after this.
Okay.
And it is going to be a huge spoiler. We're here to talk about the show, so I hope you forgive me. But please, let's talk about the Houseboat episode first.
So basically, he's on this houseboat and he's like contemplating suicide. And Lewis comes to confront him, and they just end up talking through the whole episode. And it's a very, there's an intensity to it, but it's also a sleepiness. It's a very weird episode. It almost has the tenor of a horror movie.
Yeah. How long did we stay on that houseboat with him? Because we're used to like scenes changing left and right in this show.
Right.
And we were in that houseboat for probably a good 20 minutes, I think.
God, I felt longer. I felt like the whole episode.
I know, man. And we don't immediately know that Kellerman's contemplating this. I mean, we walk in there, Julianna's just leaving, Lewis is coming in, and she's like, yeah, he's in one of his moods. Oh, okay. Well, I've seen Kellerman be in one of his moods. Well, it's gotten bad. He's in there, he's cleaning everything up, and then Lewis starts putting things together. He's a homicide detective. He can understand what's going on. He starts seeing that he's putting things in order, getting his house in order, because he's going to potentially kill himself. And then it starts to get more intense. And Lewis is like, come on, let's go grab a drink. And every time it seems like he would get one more step of getting him to drop the gun or to go with him. Lewis just wants him out of there. Come on with me. Let's get out of this boat. Let's get your mind off of things. Let's go do something. And Kellerman won't do it. And it just continues to escalate to where he has the gun in his hand. And there's like, I swear, Lewis asked him like 5 times, give me the gun. He won't do it. And he's just like kind of messing, and it was very, very intense and very moving until you're like, is he going to kill himself? And you haven't had the opportunity. He mentions in those scenes about how one of his other partners killed himself. Previous seasons, there was a suicide from one of the previous detectives that he was with. So there's a history there, and to see Lewis have to go through this, and the delivery of the lines, the you Lewis, like I said, is a cool cat in the room, and he's almost like the guy that you just don't really. His home life ain't the greatest. We don't really spend a whole lot of time in his personal life, but you start to see Lewis become a character, and that's where I was like, okay, yeah, this guy he's also got a history. But yeah, I'll step back here, please. What do you have to say?
That whole like scene, that whole scene where he's sitting there and he's like holding the gun, and it's so funny because like one of the things that I remember them like saying to each other is like, it's like Kellerman's like, just leave me alone, just let me. He's struggling with this idea of even when you're not guilty, it just feels like your life is over. You're forever branded this thing, like you're forever wearing the scarlet letter, but
right,
it's all a fiction. It's all based on accusation. There's no proof to back it up. He was absolved. He didn't actually do anything. The worst offense he committed was he didn't tell on his fellow officers, which he was raised to not do anyway. He was doing what was natural for that culture. And then he feels like there's no way up anymore. That he can't find the edge of the water and breathe again, that he's just forever going to drown. And then he's like, why live like this? Why am I doing this? And then there's his partner, Lewis, and he's sitting there telling him like, I can't let you do that because then how did I, it's interesting because, when we talk about relationships, I think we always tend to focus on romantic relationships, but there are relationships just between people, not sexual, but they are deeply like committed and enmeshed with each other. That's one of the things they talk about, like as being like detective partners. I know how my partner thinks. I know how my partner thinks. I know what he's going to do. We work hand in glove. That's one of the major sources of contention between Pembleton and Bayliss, is that they have this rift and they are not working well together. They have a contentious relationship. And then you have Lewis and Kellerman, and Lewis is like, if you do something, it looks like I failed you.
Right.
Like, you're not just hurting yourself. As often said of people who commit suicide, is that you're not just hurting yourself, you're hurting the people around you.
Right.
Obviously. And it's a very well, as goofy as the Kellerman character can be at times, it's a very well acted drama. And ultimately he stops him from doing it. But you definitely feel like, even though he's going to, and I'm going to pitch it back to you to talk about what happens to him after, but it kind of does feel like the beginning of the end for him.
Right.
Inside the homicide unit, at least.
So I can't remember if it's that episode or the next episode where Lewis runs into him. This was a big event between these two guys who have been partners. They're back in the squad room, and Kellerman's sitting there looking at a paper. He's looking like he normally does, and he says, I think he's the one that brings it up. He's like, hey, Lewis, just to let you know, I'm okay.
Yeah.
And I don't know if he said he was seeking help or whatever, but he said, I'm okay. All right. So we're led to believe at that point that Kellerman's going to be all right. He's on the mend. So one of the things that happens, we talked about Luther Mahoney. There is a few episodes where Luther Mahoney, he goes on a bit of, he's definitely the central drug kingpin figure. And he basically shoots one of his assistants, one of his drug dealers, out in the middle during a sting. Basically, they were all watching Luther Mahoney do this drug deal. They managed to get these guys together, get the film crew out there, and they filmed all of this happening. And Luther has no idea what's going on, shoots this guy. Well, then the police are like, oh crap. So they roll in on Luther, and Luther takes off, right? Luther gets to his penthouse. Lewis is in pursuit, follows it, gets up to his penthouse, and it's Lewis versus Luther Mahoney in this penthouse room. And there is a fight that breaks out, and they're fighting. Lewis almost, I think Lewis finally starts to get the upper hand somehow. And then Mahoney grabs Lewis's gun and has it pointed at Lewis. And just at that point in time, Kellerman and Stivers show up and they draw their guns on Luther Mahoney. Luther Mahoney has his gun and then lowers it. And at about that time, I can't remember what the words are said, but Kellerman fires the gun and shoots him straight in the heart and says, basically, you're dead. So he kills this man who was lowering the gun right in front of Lewis and Stivers. So the whole mental health aspect that we just talked about, it isn't taken care of. It just continued in his head. And that's where me and my wife, when we're watching this and that happens, and I hate to take that away from you, but I remember that was the biggest oh shit moment that we've ever had watching, these so far in this series, is Kellerman shooting this man when you're least expecting it. Like, he just straight up executes him. Mm-hmm. And you're like, holy shit. So there is your Kellerman. It's not the finale because Kellerman sticks around. Now you have 3 cops who have to make a decision as to how this story is going to go. They have to get their story straight. Are they going to tell G? Are they just going to write it up and everybody be on the same page that Luther had this gun raised? So that's kind of where we leave things off. And going into season 6 is that hangs over like a bad cloud most of the season. Kellerman and Lewis have turning to look behind their backs while Stivers is not liking it. So it's very interesting. Kellerman, as annoying as that character was, especially in a lot of the decisions that you see him make, where you're just like, what are you doing, dude? That right there added a huge dimension to a character that made me interested again as to what's going to happen. So yeah, that's your pretty much your finale right there. Well, I shouldn't say that. That was the big moment that happened in the season. The way the season finale happens, there's a 2-parter. And Daniel Baldwin's character, Bo Felton, ends up being found dead. And so that's kind of where we bring back Megan Russert. She comes back for 2 episodes. And Kay, Sergeant Kay, who had Melissa Leo, had hardly anything to do this season. She finally gets her day in the sun in that 2-parter as well. As they investigate.
Melissa Leo was fantastic. If you ever have an opportunity, if you have Showtime or you can sail the high seas.
Yeah.
You should definitely get a hold of both seasons of I'm Dying Up Here from Showtime. She plays like an old club owner. She's phenomenal. Like Melissa Leo.
That's good.
And so this is the last couple of years between I think 2015 and 2020. I think the show took place. I don't remember the years exactly, so I'm giving it a wide berth here. But so she's significantly older than she is during in the 1990s,
right?
Where she's in Homicide, but she's like, I don't want to say underwhelming. That's not the word I'm trying to use. So she's here. She's very straightforward. She gives understated. That's the word I was looking for.
That's actually going there.
she's a very understated performance, whereas she's not so much overstated. I'm Dying Up Here, but she's so forceful. She has such a forceful character. Like she's almost like a mafia boss, and it's like, wow, what range on Melissa Leo that I did not expect.
Right. Wow.
Just watching her in Homicide season 5.
Yeah, she does. You got to think there's a cast of characters here. And I'll kind of go through some of my high points on the characters before we get out of here. But there's a lot of characters. It isn't just Pembleton and
Bale. Talk about Richard Belzer at all.
Munch. I mean, there's a huge cast of characters. So to get everybody the time of day on this 22 episode season is tough to do. And I think Kay Howard. She had a few moments throughout the season, but nothing where when I was taking notes, she barely showed up in my notes, and she does show up obviously in the last 2 parts, but this is it. At the end of the season, she's gone. You don't see her anymore. Brody's gone as well. Did you make it to the? Okay, well, hold on. What else did you have there? Before I get into some of my favorite episodes and my notes.
Just the Richard Belzer character always cracks me up because he's kind of. I don't think Richard Belzer so much as a good actor as he does a really good job of just being himself.
Yeah.
He's a fairly entertaining guy. It's kind of like Bill Maher or Dennis Miller. There are these or like Lewis Black, they're a good example of this where they have such an interesting personality of their own. They don't really have range as an actor. They can say their lines convincingly enough, but they are more just kind of extensions of themselves.
It's so funny you mentioned Lewis Black because Lewis Black shows up in episode 19. And guess who he's talking to? That whole episode, he's talking to Munch.
So I do want to bring that up because you kept sending me pictures. It's funny. I think I watched one of these the other day when we were prepping. My wife and I were cleaning up our bedroom to await new furniture, and she sees like different actors show up. She was like, "Jesus Christ, was everybody in Law and Order on this show?" And I'm like, "Everybody." There are shows like Oz, The Wire, The Corner, that there's just a whole East Coast contingency of actors where they're never in anything out of Hollywood. They're always in something East Coast.
Mm-hmm.
And they show up in all of these like HBO and Showtime and Cinemax shows. And they show up on stuff like Law and Order. Christ, I think every actor with a SAG card has been on a David Simon production or Law and Order of some sort.
Right.
It is pretty amazing. And so, like, you would send me pictures, like, you would get to an episode, like, hey, I know that guy. And, like, yeah, these are all people from The Wire and shit, or Law and Order, or something,
It's Fat John Cena.
Yep. Fat John Cena. Yeah. He's been in a bunch of stuff, that dude.
Wow.
It's like, Hollywood's only for the fit and beautiful. No, there's some ugly, trollish motherfuckers, too. But they need them for stuff like this. They need to look at people who look like real people.
Right.
So I just wanted to say that like I said, there are no major through threads. There's a couple of things having to do with police. And again, homicide is largely a procedural drama. A homicide has been committed. Like, there's a really, really great episode, actually. I did want to talk about this. It's one of the ones I watched recently. We have a domestic abuse that turns into a murder. And Bayless struggles with dead children. And he's not looking at
that's
the case
one of his first
objectively.
cases. Yeah.
And they're questioning the mom, and the mom's like, I didn't do anything. And Bayless is really aggressive with her to the point where she's like, can I have a lawyer? Like, I don't want to be in here with you anymore. But then, Andre Brower gets rid of Bayless, and he comes back and he talks to her, and she just gives it up immediately.
Right. And that again shows you Pembleton and Bayless, it was, and that's what sucks. I think it's in this season where Pembleton's Bayless is like, I don't want to be your partner anymore.
Yes, that is the season. Oh my God. Right after the therapy thing, he invites him over for pasta. And then like the next day, Bayless is like, we're still friends, right? He's like, yeah, no. Like, I don't want to do anything else with you.
So
like, Jesus Christ. Yeah. It's like,
right.
It's such rich performances and writing in this. And it's so weird because like, who talks about homicide? Like, no one's gonna listen to this episode.
Yeah.
Who cares?
Yeah. Bayless has an interesting arc this season. We learn about how I think there was a few things where Pembleton was giving him a hard time about how he was homophobic at one point. And then we start to learn that Bayless was abused as a kid by his uncle. By the end of the season, Bayless is not showing up for work. And you're like, what is going on with Bayless? And Pembleton's doing the same thing. He's like, what is going on with Bayless? And Pembleton follows him and finds out that he's taking care of his uncle. He went and showed him. He went to his uncle's house, and he confronted his uncle. And there's a really, really, really powerful line that he says where he looks at his uncle, who is, by the way, a decrepit old man now who is, having a hard time just functioning, really. It's amazing this guy is living on his own. And he walks in the house, he sits down, and he looks at him, he says, tell me where I put my hate. And I was like, fuck.
That's like a metal line,
That's where you end it, too. And you're like, Wow. And he's
feels
trying
like
to work
that
through
feels
this.
like a hate breed lyric.
Tell me where I put my hate. And that's where you end things. And I don't even know if the old man says anything at all to him in the times that you see him. You just, you didn't start to see that he's taking care of him. But anyway, so Bayless has a pretty interesting arc. Then, I mean, Sergeant K, we talked about that. J.H. Brody, I'll go ahead and throw this out there. I said it was planned. I don't think he's homeless. He's doing, did you get to the episode where he's doing the documentary and showing everybody?
Oh my God, that's so funny, that episode.
So Brody's based off of David Simon. Apparently that is actually who that character is based off of. But I honestly think it was his plan all along to stay at everybody's house so he could get footage of them. And he was like, hey, can I stay at your house? And he kept staying at everybody else's house. And you're like, man, this poor guy.
But
and then you realize
the squad room.
Yeah. Then you realize he's doing this just to get footage for his documentary this whole time. What a brilliant man.
Okay, but even past that episode, he was still like, I want to say it's a couple episodes later after he's gone into everyone else's home. They're like, enough with you already. Is like he can't afford a place. And that's why he's living in like the precinct. And right. I think they finally convinced him to get roommates, and that's about where I left it.
It's funny because everybody's kicked him out. Lewis blames him for breaking up his marriage, or at least being a catalyst for what happened. Kay is like, oh, hey, I want to stay with you, can stay over here, and he's like got this sense of honor. No, but it's so funny because the one person that wants him to stay is Munch, and Brody's like, nah, I'm okay. He stays with him one time, and he's like, I'm not staying with you anymore. And Munch is like,
wasn't Munch like mean to him?
Munch is like, what'd you do? Look in the medicine cabinet? And what does Munch have in the medicine cabinet that's going to destroy that relationship?
Right.
I don't know what's going on there. So Julianna Cox, the medical examiner, showing up here for a cup of coffee, if you will, because she's going to be gone soon.
Okay.
She shows up, and I don't know. I think she might go into the next season, but she's going to be gone. And she's got the relationship with Kellerman. It's neat to see her show up. D.A. Danvers, I think is his name, District Attorney Danvers. He's the attorney that you see. He shows up infrequently, but he does get his own starring episode when his soon-to-be wife gets killed, and he doesn't want Pembleton to handle the case because he's worried that he's mentally unable to do so. So that was pretty cool. We talked about Kellerman, Lewis, Luther Mahoney. We talked about him. So really the only thing, at the end of the season with the two-parter, we get Gardy comes back. I talked about him being a beat cop. Gardy comes back, and he is going to be a mainstay for seasons 6 and 7. Falzone shows up, and I don't know if Callie or Ballard shows up at the end of this season or not, but we can expect her next season for sure. The big thing at the very end, like how they end the season, is G comes in as like, guys, I want to let you know we just got some the word down from Barnfather and whatever the heck we're going to be on rotation. So every 3 months, the cops of Homicide. Now, why they did this, I don't know. Maybe it's just so they could explain some of the cast maybe changing. I don't know. But they were like, the detectives were going to be on rotation to different departments throughout the police precinct. So you're a homicide detective, you could be working robbery the next 3 months. And then 3 months after that, you could be doing sexual crimes or something like that. So that's kind of like where the big cliffhanger was. So anything else before I get into my favorite episodes?
Go ahead.
All right. You sure?
No, I'm good.
You ready? You ready? He's ready. All right.
This has been a long night. Go.
Personal top episodes of the season. Okay. Now I got four of them here. I wanted to keep it 3, but I want to go 4 chronological order. Episode 7. This is called The Heart of a Saturday Night. And this is where a grief support group gets together and talks about their tragedies that occurred. And each one tells a story that involves the homicide unit. So I thought it was a neat way to tell a story. Plus, at the very end, the medical examiner, Julianna Cox, walks in at the end of the therapy, and we find out that her dad was a victim. We find out that her dad died at one point in this season, and then we learned that he was actually murdered. So that was a neat way to tell the story. Then episode 11, which was the documentary, we kind of talked about that. That has the meta moment that I told Mark about, where they're filming the documentary and they run into a film crew and Barry Levinson out in
It's fantastic.
yeah. So I thought that was really cool. Have a Conscience is episode 13. This is the boat scene. So that is clearly in my, that was going to make top 3. And then episode 19 was the holy shit moment where Mahoney gets shot. And that's where you start to learn that Mike Kellerman is not all right.
Mm-hmm.
No matter what he says, he is not all right. And he just murdered a man. So guest stars, here we go. Elijah Wood, episode 8, which also.
I watched that at home. I was watching that and I yelled out to my wife. I'm like, oh my God, Frodo's in this.
It also has one of the more funny moments of the Homicide TV show where there's an exchange between Bayless and Meldrick. So Elijah Wood's character is playing this really like smart son of a judge, if I remember right. And he's like trying to outwit them. And there's an exchange between Bayless and Meldrick, Lewis, where Bayless says, this kid thinks he's smarter than us. And Meldrick says, who's to say he's not? And in that very moment, when he turns around, he runs smack dab into Bayless, obviously underlining the fact that, they're not as smart. That kid is definitely smarter than those two. So I love that part. Mekhi Phifer shows up as Junior Bunk. And I will tell you, you remember that Junior Bunk. He's going to be, I don't know if you've got to him yet, but he's definitely going to be a character that we will see again soon. Eric Stultz is one of Kellerman's brothers.
Mm-hmm.
So he was definitely in episode 15. Neil Patrick Harris is in episode 16.
What a douchebag he plays. Did you happen to, I know you still listen to the podcast just as a fan, yes?
Yeah.
You listen to my shows. Did you listen to the review Jason and I did of Shaft and Shaft 2000?
No, not yet. No.
Okay.
Oh my goodness.
So keep this in mind when you do. Christian Bale's character in Shaft, Doogie Howser in Homicide. Same deal. The same level of douchiness.
Douche. Oh, wow.
So good.
I'll remember that. I will remember that. Edie Falco shows up in episode 18. Not a very big part, but yeah, Edie Falco nonetheless. That's right. And like I said, Lewis Black shows up in episode 19.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, guest stars galore. One of the other things that I wanted to mention was the music that is throughout these episodes. I didn't write down everything that I heard, but there was quite a few things that were recognizable. Specifically, I think there was a prison riot episode that I wrote down. They opened it up with a soul coughing song. And whenever I hear soul coughing, I'm a fan. So that's all I had for season 5 of Homicide, man. It was a lot of, I'm already into season 7. That's how much fun I'm having with this. I've got notes all the way up to season 7, but I've got to wait a month to do season 6.
You were like sending me all this stuff. I'm like, dude, I haven't even begun to watch this yet. Please calm the fuck down. We will be back on May 18th for Homicide Life on the Street season 6. We will be back on June 15th for Homicide Life on the Street season 7, and then we are finally done with Homicide. On July 13th is The Corner, the 6-episode miniseries that was on HBO, was kind of a prequel to The Wire, kind of, sort of.
Okay.
The Wire's season 1, August 17th. Wire season 2, September 14th. The Wire season 3, the best season, I think most people would agree, October 12th. The Wire season 4, November 16th. And then December will spend Christmas with us, December 14th, with The Wire season 5. And then we are into next year, January 2023, January 18th. It'll be myself. We'll have a special guest on this one. Andrew Graham will be joining us.
Oh,
as he does for all the military things we do here. We'll be talking Generation Kill. February 23rd, we start looking at Treme. So that's season 1, February 15th. I will be gone because my family drives me crazy. on a Bahamas cruise. I know it's like he's going on a Bahamas cruise and he's complaining. Have you ever been on vacation with my family? You'd complain too.
Folks, I haven't taken a vacation for years because I had kids.
Okay, do you want to go? You want to go with my wife and kids? They'll let you. It'll be fine.
I said no. I specifically don't do vacations because I had kids. Mark.
Do you want to trade? Do you want to swap? You want to go be with my family and I'll go be a monogamous husband to your wife?
I'm afraid that I'm going to have to pass, sir. I appreciate the offer. Thank you very much.
If you want to go to the Bahamas, I'm just saying so that I don't have
very
to.
tempting. My goodness, it's going to it'd probably be very pretty. So just look forward to the sights you get to see out there. It's going to be nice.
If it goes like any of my last cruises, the site's going to be the bottom of a toilet bowl as I'm vomiting.
Oh, no.
Yeah. I told everyone this time, I'm just like, if I get sick on one more fucking cruise, I'm killing everybody. Okay. I mean, I could just not go on a cruise again, but no, I think murder is the appropriate response.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. We tried it again. Murder is the only next step. Logical next step.
For the FBI agent currently listening to this podcast. So suspect number one, if anything goes wrong, I'll own that. That's fine.
The signs were there.
Tired of getting the Norwalk virus, god damn it. Anyway, Treme season, speaking of the Norwalk virus, Treme season 2, March 22nd. Season 3, April 12th. Season 17, we do Show Me a Hero, which was another miniseries, and it's phenomenal, by the way. It's a really good. The Deuce, season 1, June 14th. The Deuce season 2, July 12th. The Deuce season 3, August 16th. August 16th. The Plot Against America, September 13th, and I think that's the last one. Yeah, that's it. So we plan to do these, crazy enough. We plan to do these all the way until September of next year because I don't schedule ahead or anything.
I don't mind going month by month. These are nicely spaced. We're not trying to cram a season into a week. No. 1 month per season is great. I'm finding plenty of time apparently to cram these in if I'm already at 2 seasons ahead. So
yeah,
but I had a good time, man. I'm glad I get out there, enjoy the rest of these episodes, finish out the season, and then that way you'd be ready for season 6 because there are some definite holdovers.
Now I don't have to pay that close attention. I can just have it on in the background while I'm building web pages and stuff.
That's right.
All right. As far as with the rest of what we're doing tomorrow, myself and Alexis Hannah will be reviewing Resident Alien. In theory, I'm doing boxing Saturday night. I'm going to be doing the Errol Spencer Daniel Ugas fight. Assuming I'm home in time, I might be going out that night. Next week is Easter, and we'll have a refreshing of our Hop alternative commentary that I did with my kids. That was wildly popular for some reason. We'll
Animation.
I guess we'll have a re-airing of our Long Road to Ruin from Madagascar. And then so I asked my son, like, we did the Hop thing for Easter last year, and we were kind of we went for a little clip there where we were doing stuff that was just holiday oriented, just me and the kids. Like we did the 3 Christmas cartoons, we did Hop, we did A Nightmare Before Christmas. And I asked my son, like, do you want to do something for Easter this year? And he was like, we have to. He's a good boy. So we're going to do you remember the big bomb that was Ben-Hur 2016?
Ooh, I remember hearing about it, but I don't. Yeah,
it wasn't good. Historically, financially financially bombed. Like that made headlines. So
you're gonna make your son do this one.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Because it's Easter, and you watch Ben-Hur on Easter. Do you know that? Do you not know that, Jesse?
I had no idea.
Dude, Google it. Google Easter movies. Ben-Hur is right on there.
Okay, I believe you.
So, I mean, like, what are we supposed to do? Like, the Guardians movie, with Peter Rabbit and Santa Claus and shit.
How? Well,
Peter Rabbit, maybe.
I this is either going to make or break your boy.
Why do you?
He's going to be done. He's going to be done with podcasting after that. He's like, this is horrible.
Why do you hate Jesus?
I don't equate the two, sir.
Don't you understand that Easter is a celebration of the time Jesus came off the cross and gave all the children chocolate covered eggs?
Ben-Hur, okay, whatever.
It's on the list. I'm gonna inundate you tomorrow with lists.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, don't do that.
I'm gonna send you list after list after list that has Ben-Hur as an Easter movie.
I've never muted a conversation faster than after we get off this podcast.
That's a lie. Anyway, so my son and I will be doing the Ben-Hur alternative commentary. Then we'll have a re-airing of How to Train Your Dragon 2. Plus, myself and Sean Comer are going to be doing. He's making his monthly visit to the Radulich Broadcasting Network. The one monthly visit that I allow him to have now. We'll be doing Valerian and the City of a Thousand Planets, which is based on a French comic. Did you know that, Mr. Big Time Comic Guy?
I think I've heard of that. I'm getting that confused with. Isn't there something like Valeria and the Sky Captain? No, never mind.
You're like mixing up way different titles. So yes, this
Valerian.
Valerian and the City of a Thousand Planets was based on a French comic. John Carter is based on, I believe, a series of science fiction novels.
Yes,
and Barbarella is also based on a Clutch
song.
No. Good try. I like your enthusiasm. Based on a French comic, sir.
Oh, okay.
Do you see the theme here?
I do. Oui, oui.
Oui, oui. Français. Anyway. So that's Monday night. And then Tuesday, we'll have a re-airing of Kung Fu Panda 3, plus our review of Fantastic Beasts, The Secrets of Dumbledore, with Amber and Jason Teasley. We'll have a re-airing of the Deepwater Horizon movie, marking the anniversary of the Deepwater Horizon disaster. You remember that during the Obama years?
Yeah, I remember hearing about that. Yeah. That's some serious stuff.
At night, we'll be reviewing Ghost, and I will not be sending it to Facebook because I don't want it blocked again. And not Facebook, YouTube.
Bastards.
Our video is still blocked, goddammit.
Still blocked.
Still, normally they release the block in like 2 days. We're still blocked for whatever the reasons are.
Wow.
So I think we can go back to live streaming, I was told. I just didn't feel like doing it tonight. And then Thursday, myself and Alexis Hanna will be reviewing Green Eggs and Ham in the morning. And then at night, this is actually the next thing I got to watch. Myself and David Wright will be reviewing Star Trek Lower Decks. So that's everything in the Radulich Broadcasting Network. Jesse, I hear you got a big time comic podcast.
Big time, ladies and gentlemen. It's big time. So, hey, Cosmic Carnage, I think, released there this past week.
It sure did, Ollie.
Now you go check that out. It's the Carnage symbiote getting on to the Silver Surfer. I mean, how could you not want to listen to the chaos that would actually happen in that comic? Well, I'll tell you. It's me, it's Dean Compton, it's Derryweight. We're talking about it. Go check that out. On the recording schedule, it looks like I have listed here, we're going to be talking some single issue comics again. Me and Chris Armstrong jumping back into the Unspoken Issues bandwagon, doing Extreme Justice number 0. So that should be happening pretty soon. We are also recording for future air our episode of Tripped Up Trivia regarding magic. That's right. Not Magic the Gathering, just magic in film, magic in print, and magic in video. Well, not video games, in games, I should say. So we have 4 guests lined up for that. We are good to go. We're going to have a good time. That's going to be airing here pretty soon. Recording there this coming Saturday. On the Source Material Comics podcast, I know we just dropped some fun stuff where I talked about a Doom comic that came out in 1996. It was the most nonsensical, goofy thing that I've read in quite a while. But if you have the opportunity, go check that out. That is on the Source Material Comics podcast feed. All of those Unspoken Issues and the Source Material Comics podcast are on that feed. I think that's it. I don't really have anything else, Mark Radulich. I'm ready to get out of here if you are, sir.
No, let's talk longer and see what else goes wrong in my life tonight. Or let's just get out of here.
And record it.
Be well, be safe, and behave.